As the sun dipped below the suburban horizon, retired veteran Tom Reynolds watched in disbelief as fake HOA enforcers climbed over his beloved wheelchair ramp, ready to tow it away. A spark ignited in Tom's eyes. He reached for his old rifle stock. But what happened next would shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. In the heart of Maple Grove, a serene suburban neighborhood, life unfolded with a predictable, comforting rhythm. Tom, a man seasoned by life's trials, had settled here with his family, seeking the peace his service-earned stripes had long been denied. Maple Grove, a tapestry of well-kept lawns and cheerful mailboxes, was a cradle of memories and shared histories. Tom, his stature diminished by years, but not his spirit, commanded the respect of his neighbors through his unwavering composure and kindness. His home, a modest house adorned with red bricks dulled by time, bore one significant alteration: an unassuming wheelchair ramp. It was a testament to Tom's resilience, a necessary feature that aided his movement from the house to the tranquil world beyond his doorstep. The ramp, sturdy yet unobtrusive, blended seamlessly with the neighborhood's ambience. It symbolized not only Tom's autonomy, but also the community's willingness to embrace difference with empathy and pragmatism. Neighbors often stopped by for light-hearted chats or gentle discussions about bygone military days, leaving his porch with stories that lingered like the sweet smell of jasmine in the summer heat. Yet this calm was shattered by the startling arrival of unannounced HOA representatives. Their presence was peculiar, as if they'd appeared from nowhere without warning. Clad in imposing suits and armed with clipboards that seemed heavier than their common sense, they exuded an air devoid of warmth or understanding. Their mission was clear: uphold order, regardless of rationale or compassion. Tom observed as these representatives embarked on their self-imposed crusade, weaving through Maple Grove like shadows casting doubt on sunlit lawns. Their scrutiny fell upon the minutiae of everyday life: a slightly leaning fence post, a day-late trash can. But when their prying eyes fixed on Tom's ramp, murmurs of disquiet began to ripple among the homeowners like an unwelcome breeze. The ramp, to the chagrin of these authoritarian figures, was catalogued as a nonconformity, a deviation from their rulebook governing the neighborhood's aesthetic coherence. Voices of concern surfaced, initially subdued, then crescendoing into fervent discussions across shared fences and lawn gatherings. The unassuming quiet of Tom's street was punctuated by the hum of discontent as neighbors weighed their newfound vulnerability against their loyalty to a cherished veteran. Beneath the enforcers' strict exterior, Tom perceived the fragile nature of their authority, driven not by community interest, but by an overzealous, asterisk interpretation of governance, untempered by the human stories within each home they targeted. Tom's ramp became more than a utilitarian structure. It evolved into a symbol of resistance, a beacon illuminating the balance between regulatory shackles and the community's inherent right to uphold empathy and respect. Tom sat at his kitchen table, the morning sun casting a warm glow across the room. As he sipped his coffee, he contemplated the latest wave of HOA regulations that had swept through Maple Grove like an unexpected storm. These self-appointed enforcers, who'd appeared overnight, were more than an inconvenience. They'd become a growing source of tension in the peaceful community. Strutting through the neighborhood with clipboards like weapons, their motives were thinly veiled by a pretense of maintaining standards. Tom heard whispers from neighbors, tales of exorbitant fines for trivial infractions, lawns deemed too unkempt, paint colors allegedly beyond the acceptable palette. It was an exploitation of power that seemed absurd, but held real consequences for those unlucky enough to attract their scrutiny. The anger simmering within Tom surged when his own home came under their gaze. His wheelchair ramp, an essential adaptation for his aging body and a testament to the mobility battles he'd fought, was deemed a violation of HOA policies. The notice pinned to his door was stark and unapologetic, its threatening tone unmistakable: remove the ramp or face penalties. Tom's military past had instilled a respect for rules, but this was different. This wasn't about community well-being, it was about control, possibly financial gain. His instincts told him the enforcer's actions were driven by a less honorable agenda, the fines likely lining individual pockets rather than benefiting Maple Grove. As days passed, Tom found himself at the center of a moral battle. Older residents, who'd watched the community grow over decades, turned to him for guidance, respecting his measured judgment and unshakable integrity. How could something as necessary as his ramp be questioned? The neighborhood buzzed with stories of intimidation, homes once filled with laughter now cloaked in apprehension. Tom's resolve hardened with every conversation. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was advocating for the entire community, for their right to live without fear of undue harassment. His anger, tempered by the knowledge that righteousness was on his side, fueled a steadfast resistance to wrongdoing. The confrontation with the HOA was inevitable, a catalyst for a deeper reckoning in Maple Grove. Tom sat on his porch, the early morning sun casting a glow over the manicured lawns and white picket fences. The tranquility that had been a constant in his retired life was now a rare visitor. He knew they were coming, the so-called HOA enforcers, faceless men who'd appeared with clipboards and a menacing air of authority. These weren't the friendly neighbors who once handled issues over coffee. They epitomized unchecked power, a shameless exploitation wrapped in fraudulent legality. Tom's throat tightened as he watched them approach, their demeanor a mix of arrogance and false righteousness. They were here, as warned, to do the unconscionable, remove the wheelchair ramp that granted him independence, a lifeline since arthritis and age had stripped his ability to navigate stairs. Their leader, a rotund man whose suit seemed a size too small, led the charge. His sunglasses reflected the morning light, masking any empathy he might have possessed. Tom stood tall, leaning on his cane, every inch the formidable figure of his younger years, a man who'd seen wars, understood the stakes of freedom, and now faced a battle for dignity. A group of neighbors gathered, drawn by the escalating confrontation. The atmosphere was electric, rippling with tension and rising indignation. Tom's neighbors circled closer, their whispered conversations growing louder as they grasped the injustice. "You can't do this," one shouted, defiance in their voice. Murmurs of agreement flowed through the crowd, young parents with children on their hips, elderly couples arm in arm, professionals united by outrage against the overreach. Tom raised a hand, signaling for quiet. His voice, low and measured, carried over the cacophony. "This ramp isn't just a ramp," he said, words heavy with meaning. "It's a symbol of our right to live with dignity and freedom, without oppression masquerading as authority." The statement ignited the crowd's spirit. The enforcers, taken aback by the unity, hesitated. Tom met their leader's gaze, his expression devoid of anger, only steely determination. As the men continued their bluster, Tom stepped forward, grip tightening on his cane. Waves of resolve poured off him, enough to make even the most deceitful pause. He was not just one man protecting a ramp, he was a veteran defending his turf, his past sacrifices intertwined with this moment. Behind him, the support of Maple Grove swelled like an unstoppable tide. As afternoon edged into evening, Tom stood in his driveway, hand resting on the ramp that was both lifeline and freedom. It wasn't just wood and screws, it was the bridge between confinement and dignity. The HOA enforcers, rogue operatives conspiring under the guise of authority, had targeted it as a pawn in their game of control. The anger simmering in Tom was a familiar sensation, one he hadn't indulged in years, fueling him through battles long past. He could retreat, defeat draping over him, or act. For Tom, retreat wasn't an option. His decision was bolstered by the unspoken support of neighbors watching from their windows, knowing he fought for the principle that no one should live under tyranny, even if disguised in HOA polo shirts. In his living room, amid dusty service awards, Tom retrieved the stock of his old rifle, a relic from another life, more symbol than weapon, an emblem of resilience. He had no intention of violence, but aimed to show strength through presence. With steady determination belying his age, Tom moved outside, eyes set on the approaching enforcers, who sauntered with tools of intimidation. His presence halted their advance. Tom's resolute gaze spoke volumes, a challenge and a promise of resistance. The enforcers hesitated, sensing the shift. Tom's silence was his defiance, demanding their retreat. Yet, driven by desperation, two intruders lunged, aiming to seize their early triumph. Tom shifted, his stance echoing the discipline of his service. Using the rifle stock with an artist's precision, he redirected their advance without real harm. They stumbled onto the pavement, the sharp slap of their fall echoing, a metaphorical and physical defeat. There they lay, dazed, their illusion of power shattered by an elderly man's fortitude. Tom remained poised, breathing steady, eyeing the fallen with pity and firm resolution. Justice, he realized, had a face, not just authority, but integrity. News of Tom's stand spread rapidly, echoing through Maple Grove like rolling thunder. His outwitting of the fake enforcers with only his resolve and an old rifle stock gripped the community. Neighbors, once isolated in their struggles, found their voices bolstered by Tom's defiance. Sarah Miller, who lived across the street, had watched from her kitchen window. A single mother, she'd felt harassed by the enforcers' fines and threats. Seeing Tom stand firm, she felt a spark of hope. She marched over with homemade cookies, a small gesture to thank Tom for reigniting her courage. Within days, Tom's house became a hub. Neighbors flocked with goods, gratitude, and stories of their grievances against the fraudulent HOA. Ed and Mary, an elderly couple, spoke of fines for garden gnomes and their door's color. Young couples fretted over baseless fees. Each story became a rallying cry. George Clark, a retired police officer, observed the solidarity with pride. Discovering the HOA was part of a network targeting veteran communities, exploiting bureaucratic loopholes, he and Tom rallied Maple Grove into action. Block meetings under twilight allowed fears to give way to boldness. Flyers detailed the fraud and legal resources. Conversations once whispered unfolded into a chorus demanding justice. Maple Grove transformed. Homes displayed posters, "We stand with Tom." The community boycotted fake meetings, refused illegitimate fines. Tom's stance resonated, proving unity was strength. The local media amplified the story, Tom symbolizing a struggle against eroded fairness. Reporters sought interviews, which he gave with humble pragmatism. Real authorities intervened swiftly, marching out the imposters, their ruse exposed. The fraudsters faced trials, public denouncements, and legal ramifications, while Maple Grove found its voice, attending city council meetings, challenging unjust policies, and fostering transparency. Through Tom's catalytic act, Maple Grove embraced a new identity of resilience, reviving community spirit. The saga of the fake HOA, initially deceit, became a testament to truth's triumph. In the golden light of a late afternoon, Tom sat on his porch, the cool metal of his rifle stock by his leg. The neighborhood buzzed softly, children's laughter, a dog's bark, a symphony Tom cherished. His ramp stood firm, a symbol of defiance and dignity. It wasn't just a battle for wood but for autonomy, against those seeking to oppress. Tom's weathered face wore tranquil determination. His actions had awakened a collective consciousness. No longer isolated houses, Maple Grove was a united front bound by justice and humanity. Where apprehension once lingered, camaraderie thrived. Children played on Tom's porch, parents waved with gratitude. Listening to his granddaughter's laughter, Tom knew his fight was for every family in Maple Grove, safeguarding their right to live free of unjust authority. As the sun dipped, painting the sky in orange and pink, Tom nodded, affirming the peace they'd fought for was theirs. Maple Grove celebrated with shared casseroles and kind gestures, Tom their hero, not by choice, but necessity. The ramp, and the community it symbolized, stood stronger than ever, a legacy of courage and unity.